Hi everyone, welcome back to Raised Reads. Today we will be discussing our September book, The Color Purple by Alice Walker. I've actually seen the Color Purple movie before, and I think I appreciate it so much more after reading the book. And I'm definitely going to try and make a habit of reading books before I watch movies, because there was something special about the way the book was written and all of the stories, and I just really fell in love with it. Um, and I think what was really special about the story was in the beginning where she talks about tsunamis and hurricanes, a book about God versus the God image. And I think I've been dealing with this a lot and what my idea of um, God is and how God moves through us. So I'm going to read this little clip that she um, said. This was the God image they'd first glimpsed after being captured, beaten, and starved, shackled and branded. They left their homeland of Africa, a God image that, in fact, was someone else's image of God, and not a reflection of the people forced to worship it. It is possible to visit Black churches in the South, even now, and find the object of devotion to be a very pale Jesus Christ, blue eyes raised towards his adored, assumed bigger and whiter Father in heaven. This was the same adoration of himself that the slave master drilled into his slaves. I was born at a time that permitted me to see remnants of this baffling and soul murdering behavior, and to join the movement of Black people in the 60s whose goal was to eliminate it. So I think there's a very complicated relationship with Christianity and how we see God and how God moves through us, considering how much colonialism and slavery affected what Christianity that we have right now. And so I think about that a lot. That's referenced a lot throughout the book. You can see the God image that Celie talks about is not this God that she had been force fed, um, and her complicated relationship with God and why are we here? Why am I suffering in this life? And will I ever find happiness? And that's what her relationship with God is most of the time. And I think that's fair to ask, what's going on here? Like, why would my God allow slavery? Um, and so I think it's very, very real and still very relevant questions to be asking. There's a lot of relationships here. There's Black women's relationship with Black men and how they are causing actual pain and hurt to these Black women, and how that's still really relevant today, on top of still suffering at the hands of white people. And then there's also the relationship of sisterhood and how important that is to Celie as she's moving through her life, and how she doesn't even give up the thought that her sister might be dead, even though they hadn't seen each other in forever, because in her spirit, she still felt her. And that's just so beautiful, so poetic. You even talk about Celie falling in love and understanding that she's falling in love with a woman and trying to figure out what's going on there and what she's been taught, and her relationship around sex and how she's been taught it was sinful, and all of these things that people still discover to this day in their own way as they're growing up. It's still so relevant, and I think that's what makes it so beautiful to me. um I also think something really interesting was Celie's sister talking about all of her time in Africa and them being missionaries, but it was like, what mission are you bringing? Is it the Christianity mission? Because that's rooted in colonialism. So what are you bringing to these people? And her sister talks about that so much that they don't really trust us like that. Like, yeah, they've gotten used to us, but they'd rather not have us here. And they know that we aren't a part of their homeland, and that being African American is different than being African. Um, and especially being an African American who has come as a missionary. So yeah, there was so much going on there. Samuel was really interesting talking about why did they leave us with them? Like what why did we have to be the ones that became slaves? And that's such a hard question. And you could just feel the conflict there, but there's no real answer. Um, and he definitely, I think he mentions it twice throughout the book. So there's so many themes, so many relevant topics that are still trying to figure out now and trace back who we are, what do we believe in, where does our purpose lie? Like all of those questions are still here, still relevant. It's a circle of life. They'll always be here. And I think Alice did such a great job of bringing all of it together in like letter form, which is really cool. Um, for example, I'll talk about Shug, and this is the person Celie fell in love with, this woman who is an amazing singer and just had everyone at her toes, men, women, everyone. Um, and so I'll read this. Here's the thing, says Shug. The thing I believe. God is inside you and inside everybody else. You come into the world with God, but only them that search for it inside find it. And sometimes it just manifests itself even if you're not looking or don't know what you're looking for. So Celie also talks about God and her relationship, and from learning from Shug what her definition of God is. She says, anyhow, I say, the God I've been praying and writing to is a man, and act just like all the other men's I know, trifling, forgetful, and low down. Let him hear me, I say. If he ever listened to poor colored women, the world would be a different place, I can tell you. Celie's sister, Nettie, also tells her about her relationship with God. She says, God is different to us now, after all those years in Africa, more spirit than ever before and more internal. Most people think he has to look like something or someone, a roof leaf or Christ, but we don't. And not being tied to what God looks like frees us. These were just some beautiful, beautiful ideas of who God is to them. And like you agree with, I personally agree with all of them. Like God works through you in internal ways. And it doesn't have to be this image that you see. It's literally anything. It's around us. God is here all the time and it frees us. Like she said, not being tied to what God looks like frees us. Overall, this was a beautiful story of Black women fighting against what the world has destined for them, whether that's what God looks like, how they should behave as a wife, how they should move throughout the world. They were always rebelling and always fighting against that to say how they wanted to take up space. You see it everywhere. You see it with Sophia, you see it with Nettie, you see it eventually with Celie, you see it with Shug all the time. This was all about Black women taking up the space, how they wanted to, despite what the world was saying. And that's just an amazing story. Like, that's what we do every day and continue to do. And it's amazing. So definitely, definitely read The Color Purple. Then you can go watch the movie if you'd like. And I hope you enjoyed this review. I will see you in a little. Bye.